Guruji, Shukrana Guruji. This is the ninth chapter of Guruji Divine Book, Surcharged with Divine Love, written by Sukhmani Aunty. Guruji stay in Chandigarh. My mother and I were fortunate enough to serve Guruji during his stay in Chandigarh. It was then that I had the opportunity to observe him from close quarters. What people in general saw were probably his silken robes and assumed he liked luxury and comfort. But what we saw was completely different. The silk robes were given to him by his disciples, some as a thank you for saving someone's life or maybe on the marriage of their children. These dresses he wore once or twice and then gave them away as prasad to any one of his many followers. He had absolutely no possessions of his own except a shaving kit, which too was given by someone. He ate simple food, half of which he distributed amongst those sitting around him. Every night we would prepare his bed on the floor, for he never slept on the bed. Having been his disciple for many years before this, I had never seen this side of him. His simplicity, humility, and innocence put many of us to shame. I remember an incident where Guruji was distributing chapatis during a stopover at his village. One chapati fell down, and as my mother lifted it up to put it aside, he told her not to throw it and that he would eat it himself. Such was his humility and kindness. He never ate before his Sangat and never let anyone go without feeding them. No one was allowed to put money at his feet, like it is usually done in India. As a sign of respect to his saint, whatever gift he received from the Sangat, he would further distribute them. He kept nothing with himself. We were instructed by Guruji to bring halwa prasad for him to distribute among the Sangat. We were also told that apart from the family and one of our maids, Saraswati, no one else was to enter the kitchen while the prasad was being cooked. We took great care to follow his instructions. My mother and I were given the duty to sweep and mop the entire house where Guruji stayed as well as wash his clothes. Since we didn't want to be late for our duties, the major work of preparing the prasad fell on our maid Saraswati, who too was a follower of Guruji. The prasad used to be brought to the bandit just before the Sangat started to arrive. I would then cool it enough for Guruji to distribute it with his hands. One day, as soon as Guruji touched the prasad, he asked me, Sukhmani, who has made the prasad today? I presume, like always, it must be Saraswati, and I told him so. No, today the prasad is not nice. Someone else has touched it. Although he still distributed it, but kept telling me it wasn't nice. I never noticed anything wrong with the texture. It looked the same as always and didn't understand what was wrong. I rang up home and to ask Saraswati what had happened, and she said that the second maid had entered the kitchen for a few minutes and she did touch the prasad. I apologized to Guruji for the mistake but was still confused as to why some people were allowed to touch his food while others were forbidden. Sensing my dilemma, he said, ਅਸੀਂ ਹਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਹੱਥ ਦਾ ਖਾਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਾ ਸਕਦੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਵਾਈਬ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੈਗੇਟਿਵ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਖਾਣਾ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਟਾਈਮ ਉਹ ਵਾਈਬ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਖਾਣੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਹਰ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਖਾ ਸਕਦਾ। ਕਈ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਪੈਸਾ ਸਖਤ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸਿਰਫ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਕੌਣ ਮੇਰਾ ਖਾਣਾ ਬਣਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। A Mahapurush cannot eat food prepared for just my any hand. Some people have negative vibrations which while cooking goes into the food. That food then harms us. Although I can't eat food from certain families, even though they may be very nice, only I know who can prepare my food and who cannot. Guruji, what is the significance of this prasad that you distribute? I ask, इस प्रसाद ਵਿੱਚ ਮੇਰੀਆਂ ਬਲੇਸਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਸਿਰਫ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ 25 ਸਾਲ ਅੱਗੇ ਤੱਕ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਲੈਸ ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਮੰਦਿਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਖਾ ਕੇ ਜਾਇਆ ਕਰੋ ਇੱਥੇ ਦਵਾਈ ਬਾਹਰ ਮਿਠਾਈ The prasad I distribute to you all is charged with my powers. I take all your bad karmas and give you blessings. My blessings may not be for just today, but maybe for an even 20 years down the line. He further added, eat all of what is served in the temple here itself, for here it will act like medicines. The moment you take it home, it becomes less effective. Every evening we would bring fresh flowers for the temple as well as his room. I soon noticed that the one in the temple stayed fresh for at least 3-4 days, while the one in his room had to be changed every day as they would get burned. Not able to stop myself, I asked him, Guruji, why do the followers in your room get burned around the edges while the one in the hall remained fresh for many days? ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹਦੀ ਪਾਵਰ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਅਗਰ ਦੇ ਗੋਲੇ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਮੈਡੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਇੰਨੀ ਪਾਵਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਓਵਰਫਲੋ ਕਰਨੀ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਹੀਟ ਨਾਲ ਤੇਰੇ ਫੁੱਲ ਮੁਰਝਾ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਸੰਗਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਸਨ ਦੇ ਬੈਠਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਉਸ ਵਕਤ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਸ ਪਾਵਰ ਨੂੰ ਉੜੇਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ The power in me is like a ball of fire. The heat generated during my meditation is what what causes the flowers to get burned. Replied Guruji, every night when I sit on meditation, the power in me builds up to such an extent that I have to let it overflow. When I sit on the asan amongst all of you is when I let the power overflow. I now understood why people who came to the temple were getting cured without saying a word to Guruji. His aura was so strong that whoever came within its range instantly felt better. पानी चाय लंगर और प्रसाद विच मेरी पावर है जो मिलता है खाई चलो मना ना करो कदी भी प्रसाद ਨੂੰ ਬਣਨਾ नहीं ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਇਹ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੀ ਖਾਣਾ ਹੈ ਜੇ ਬਦਾਓਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਨਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਭਲਾ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ ਨਾ ਹੀ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਉਸ ਦਾ the water or the tea that you drink here the langar and the prasad and are all infused with my powers so never refuse anything that gets served here said Guruji and most importantly never share your prasad with anyone. What I give you is for you alone and not for anyone else. If you share it, then neither you nor the person you share it with get benefited. It is then that I understood the importance of everything that got served in the temple. What others thought to be normal tea and food were actually divine Amrit. Ever since I met Guruji for the first time, I was aware of a beautiful fragrance that came from him. I used to wonder if it was something that Guruji used, maybe a perfume, but could never quite understand. Each time I pressed his feet, the fragrance would start coming from my hands as well. Everything he touched would become fragrant. Each morning when Guruji got up from meditation, I would go into his room to clean it, and the fragrance would be so strong that I sometimes had difficulty breathing. It was as if 100 bottles of perfumes had been broken in that room. Being the curious person that I am, I just had to know the source of this beautiful fragrance. I asked him, Guruji, what is this beautiful fragrance all around you? He laughed at my foolishness and said, it is not perfume. I felt a bit sheepish, but I had to probe. Then what is it? Guruji, please tell me, why was the room so fragrant when I entered it this morning? Guruji then explained, ए खुशबू मेरी बॉडी दी नेचुरल खुशबू है ਕਰੋੜਾਂ ਅਰਬਾਂ ਮਹਾਪੁਰਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਇੱਕ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਇਹ ਖੁਸ਼ਬੂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਸ਼ਿਵ ਜੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਖੁਸ਼ਬੂ ਹੈ this fragrance is in my body. One is a billion Mahapurush will have this fragrance. Lord Shiva has it. At that time, I never understood the importance of what he had just told me. He then made me smell his hands and feet. The fragrance was divine. In the same room where Guruji meditated, there was a photograph of his feet kept on a wooden niche. Sukhmani, look at that photograph. Every day Amrit flow out of it. I got up to see the photograph, but I couldn't see the Amrit flowing. I did, however, notice that the photograph, although laminated, was getting puffed up as if due to moisture. I was asked to smell it, and sure enough, the photograph had the same fragrance. Every day, when I entered his room to clean it, I would first go to the photograph hoping to see the Amrit flow. For many days, I could not see it till one day, as soon as I opened the door, I saw Amrit flowing from the picture. My mother and I both witnessed the miracle, and I, being me, had to taste it. I took a drop of it and tasted it, and I cannot describe how tremendously divine is tasted. I scrutinized the photograph, turned it upside down, wiped it dry, but still the Amrit continued to flow. Ever since that day, this was my daily routine. I would wait for Guruji to set up from meditation and leave the room so that I could taste a bit more of his divine Amrit. No doubt Guruji was aware of my drinking the Amrit and made sure it never stopped flowing from as long as he stayed in Chandigarh. One day, as I entered Guruji's room to clean it, I noticed a yellow patch on the green colored carpet. Assuming someone had dropped something, I began to scrub the patch vigorously. Just then Guruji walked into the room. What happened? Asked Guruji. Guruji, there is a yellow patch on your carpet that I am trying to clean, but it's not going. Oh, that patch got burned last night, therefore it discolored. Now touch it and see. I have just taken out Amrit from that and see from that patch as well. Although I was scrubbing the area with a dry cloth, the patch now was wet. I smelled it and it had the same divine fragrance of his Amrit. The patch remained fragrant as long as Guruji was in Chandigarh. After cleaning the temple and Guruji chamber, I would say then I would then wash his clothes. Needless to say, his clothes too were drenched in divine Amrit and had the same fragrance. I tried washing them till the fragrance could go, but that was just my stupidity. The more I washed then, the stronger the fragrance grew. No matter through how many waters I took them out of the fragrance remained. No perfume could pass this test. I always had a habit of collecting things that Guruji discarded. Things like a plaster on his fragrance finger, things like a plaster on his finger, seeds of fruit that he ate, or an old towel or old glasses. I soon had a bag full of things belonging to Guruji. I would replace his toothbrushes sooner than they needed changing and keep the old ones. I even collected the dust that got swept out of his room. For me, even that was more precious than anything in the world. Guruji was obviously aware of my activities and was rather amused. If by chance I would forget to collect something of his, I would quietly push it toward me and point out, Sukmani, don't go want this. I would then quickly grab it before anyone could think of throwing it away. One thing that I always had my eyes on were his shoes. I was fortunate enough to be given his dresses as prasad, but I always had my eyes on his shoes. Each time he would give them away to someone, he would look at me and smile, but he never gave them to me as long as he lived in his physical body. The day Guruji took Mahasamadhi, I cried in front of his photograph and said, Guruji, if you truly love me like your daughter, send me your shoes. I don't care how you make it possible, but until you do, I won't believe you love me enough. Within 2 months, I had Guruji's shoes in my hand. For a short period, Guruji switched from wearing silk dresses to cotton ones. My mother got one dress for Guruji prepared in cotton. Just as soon as she had it stitched, Guruji went back to wearing silk again. Feeling a bit ashamed of presenting him with an ordinary cotton dress, my mother decided not to give to him. One night I saw Guruji in telepathy and he asked me to bring to him the cotton dress that my mother had got stitched from him. I managed to convince my mother to give it to him, but instead she just quietly kept the dress in his room. While giving us leave for the day, he told us to come the next day at 2 p.m. On reaching the temple at 2 p.m. as instructed, we were told that Guruji had gone out and had instructed us to wait. Within 10 minutes, Guruji walked in wearing the cotton dress that my mother had got made for him. A, good, a guru doesn't see the value of a gift ordered by a disciple. What he does, however, see is the love and intention with which it is offered. Close the mandir today and tell everyone, I have gone out. Guruji told my mother and I, Sukhi auntie, you distribute the prasad on my behalf and after everyone has gone, come and tell me what happened. As instructed, we closed the temple and told everyone that Guruji had gone out. We distributed the prasad from the gate and to the Sangat as and when they came. Some expected his orders, took prasad and went back. Some questioned as about his weird boots, while some got angry with us and never took the prasad. As we finished and went in, Guruji told us exactly what had happened at the gate. He named the people who didn't accept the prasad that day. Do the same thing tomorrow, said Guruji, as instructed. We stood at the gate the next day to distribute the prasad. Again, the same people questioned us and got angry with us. Some accused us of telling lies, some quietly accepted Guruji orders and went back. After we finished and went in, Guruji again gave us the details of what had happened. Guruji, what was the reason behind this? I asked. जिस तरह तुसी कोई चीज़ ਨੂੰ ਖਰੀਦਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਟੈਸਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਚੇਲਾ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਟੈਸਟ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਅਹੰਕਾਰ ਰੱਬ ਦੀ ਰਾਹ ਤੇ ਚੱਲਣ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਨੂੰ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਨਾ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰੋ ਤੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਕਰੋ just as you test something before buying it. I too test people before I make them my disciple. He then said, ego is the biggest deterrent on the path of spirituality. Never question the Guru orders and never try to probe about your Guru. My mother and I were sitting with Guruji in his room when suddenly he said, the Shiva idol at the Bade Mandir has been installed. I knew that Guruji temple was being constructed in Delhi, but beyond that I knew nothing. I was there and I even took out a sound from the idol. I could just say, yes, Guruji, as I didn't understand how he could be in Delhi when he was here with us all the time. The next day, a caretaker from the Delhi temple came with a box of sweets to meet Guruji and tell him that the Shiva idol had been installed the day before. Guruji just looked at me and smiled. Similarly, we were again with Guruji when he asked both my mom and me to press his feet. Press my feet and I shall take a nap. My mother and I were busy pressing his feet when he woke up and asked, how much time has passed? I looked at the clock and said, half an hour, Guruji. Just half an hour? I have already been to America. A saintly person visiting Guruji once asked me, do you think Guruji is sitting here? I looked at Guruji and said, of course he is. He's sitting on his asan, can't you see him? He smiled and nodded. This is just his body. Guruji is somewhere else. That's when we realized that Guruji had the ability to be at two or more places at the same time. One disciple visiting Guruji in Chandigarh felt heartbroken at the fact that he could not get to sit close to Guruji and wondered if Guruji even knew of his existence. Feeling sad and dejected, he closed his eyes to pray. As soon as he did so, he saw Guruji sitting with each and every disciple in the hall. It doesn't matter where you sit, close or far. It doesn't matter if you can see him or not. Your Guru will always be able to see you and is always near you. All you have to do is call out to him sincerely and he will be with you. Guruji often said, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਨਜ਼ਦੀਕ ਬੈਠਦਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਕਲਿਆਣ ਮੈਂ ਲਾਸਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਨੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਕਲਿਆਣ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ People who come and try to sit close to me are the ones I bless last. I bless those who patiently sit at the back or in corners, trusting in my ability to see them even through walls. I feel like eating paneer tikkas today. I told my mother as we were getting ready to go to Guruji temple. As soon as I entered Guruji's temple, I completely forgot about having made such a statement. Guruji was getting ready to attend a function at a disciple home that day and asked us to join him. After the function, Guruji instructed a few of us to follow his car. I presumed he was going back to the temple, but he drove into a five-star hotel. Going straight into the coffee shop, he sat down and asked us all to order whatever we wanted. I still didn't remember the comment about the paneer tikkas and ordered a cold coffee and sat down to enjoy it along with Guruji Divine Company. I never came to know when Guruji ordered a plate of paneer tikkas, and as it was brought to the table, Guruji pushed the plate in front of me saying, आज साडी बेटी नू पनीर टिक्का खान दा मन है सारी प्लेट कहाँ जा Today my daughter feel like eating paneer tikka, eat the entire plate. Never had I ever felt so loved and cherished before. And so, I ate away with tears in my eyes. One night, as Guruji retired into his room, I gathered all the prasad utensil and his bed sheets that needed to be washed and started to walk toward my car parked outside. Just as I sat down at the passenger side, there was a knock on the window. I was a bit startled to see Guruji. How could this be possible? I just let him in his room. There is no way he could be out here as well. With all these thoughts going on in my mind, I rolled down my window and before I could say anything, he said, Sukmani, from tomorrow learn how to drive. There will be a time when you will drive in Delhi to come and see me. Me and drive? Didn't he know I was mortally frightened of driving because of a massive accident I had on the Bombay Pune highway? I asked my mother, there is no way I am going to learn how to drive. My stubborn resolve only lasted a day and I was soon enrolled with one of the driving school in Chandigarh. Every afternoon Guruji would tell me about my progress or rather the lack of it. You couldn't put the fourth gear today or you can't reverse the car well yet. This was all I would hear from the 15 days training I took with the school. Finally, Guruji instructed a young boy who I thought drove like a maniac to teach me how to drive. There was an open ground next to his temple, and as soon as I finished cleaning and washing at the temple, I was instructed to learn driving. The young boy would put bricks and chairs and would ask me to drive between them or create the digit 8 in reverse gear. Half the time, being elder to him, I would scold him for making me do crazy things, and all this while, Guruji monitored my progress. I soon started driving well. I realized that maybe sometime in the future, I may be needing this skill, and little did I know that within a few years my grandfather would be critically ill and my being able to drive would prove to be an asset. I learned that a guru can't see the bigger picture and one must never question his decision. Where our thinking stops, his begin.